screen.
Also, we probably won't do ARG live. I'll tell you that right now. Again, because we'll probably record it at midnight on a Thursday or something. So I don't think anybody will care too much about ARGs.
No.
Okay, but I've got a little bit on the now. You played. You were virtual racing.
Right.
Which unfortunately, I played it, but I can't emulate it on the Genesis because it requires special hardware,
right?
Which you don't have. You have to have the cartridge. That
I
cartridge
couldn't.
Was a pricey gimmick back in the day too.
I couldn't. Yeah, we're talking about that on the show.
Yeah.
I couldn't get it to work on the Xbox. It froze at the title screen, and when I tried it on an emulator, it also froze on the title screen. The only place I could play it was through one of those web-based emulators.
That's weird. I played it on the remnants of my MAME cabinet, and it worked. Of course, you know, that's a game that we've both played for real. Remember that dude's arcade?
That was Daytona.
Was that Daytona we played there?
Yeah.
I didn't know he. Oh, maybe we're talking about a different guy because I've played.
This is Wade, right?
This is the guy that had the screens on top. That wasn't Daytona, was it? That was virtual racing.
Maybe
because it was super old. It was the wireframe virtual racer. Daytona's much nicer than that.
Oh, okay.
Daytona goes Daytona.
Oh yeah.
This didn't do any of that.
Okay.
This is where the sparks are flying off and the big boxy wheels.
Right,
and stuff.
right.
All right.
Man, nobody's joined us yet in the chat. That's slightly disconcerting.
Well, they probably can't believe we're on time. Man, it's funny. I got to Milton in record time. I mean record time. And then they've got the stoplights there in Milton all jacked up. So at the McDonald's, I sat there for like 5 cycles. I was just like, son of a bitch, can I get through this thing? And Brent called, and then Brent was stuck behind you. He goes, well, somebody just wrecked. I was like, well, I've been there. It's coming the other way.
You know what I've been doing the past couple of days? I turn right out of Winfield Middle School, go down 817 to St. Albans, and then come up 60. I get home at the normal time.
Why?
30 minutes. Because I get home in 30 minutes instead of 50.
Wow. Why don't you just come up Hurricane Creek?
What?
You're leaving Winfield High School,
right?
Or middle school, and you're going down to
I'm turning right, not turning left.
You're going down to Polka?
No, that street doesn't go to Polka.
I'm confused as to where you're at.
If you follow that street
right
all the way
river.
down, yeah, and you pass John Amos on your left, it takes you all the way to where.
Oh yeah, across the river goes to Polka. Yeah,
it goes to where the old drive-in movie theater is.
Right,
and then I take 60 home. It takes me 30 minutes to get home.
Why are you doing that?
Because that's the shortest route home by far.
As opposed to going
Hurricane Creek, to go across Hurricane Creek is a half hour.
But I mean, I'm confused. You can't just go across there's no work at the Woodfield exit there.
Oh, it's backed.
Is there?
Yeah.
Why? There's no construction there.
Because it's cut. You know,
Are people getting off?
They go down to one lane right after the hurricane exit.
Oh, people are getting off
and
there.
And so people are it's backed up already.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm glad to see everybody's taking a bite of the shit sandwich.
Yeah, yeah. But it's definitely not nearly as bad as coming your way.
You ready to take this thing to the house, Bo?
Yeah.
I've got a little bit on the Genesis here. We'll go over.
Okay.
I guess I will go first today since your game is definitely better than mine.
Okay.
And I think I went into the CD version a little bit just because it's relevant, but not a ton. And
have you tried this Fine?
I have not. I will have open my chaser in case I get scarred. Got on last night to do my preliminary interview with Shane. He didn't show up, and so
nice.
I was like, and he told me he had a work emergency, so it did eventually. He did.
You know how these famous guys are. They cancel the drop of a hat.
You're going to be impressed with the amount of Amiga stuff he's got. I mean, we're going to fill. You know, we did these shows where they're like Oliver Twins or whatever. This is the interview where the guys go. I guarantee you, I can get 50 minutes out of him, and it's all gold.
Great,
because he worked for a publishing company for Amiga, and also he did something that no one ever talks about. He worked for a place. He put together adult discs for the Amiga, and he parlayed the technology that he got from that to make games for the Amiga. He made it. His production company made games. He was at the meeting where they were trying to decide what to do with the Amiga properties. He was at the auction screaming at people. No, I mean I'm not saying he was a big player, but he's got an interesting first-hand account
Yeah.
of the Amiga. So
Well, I'm telling you though, when you mix it up with these stars,
this guy's not a star. Our podcast is 5 times bigger than his.
well, maybe in factuality, but in his mind, he's like these
Well,
guys.
one thing about him, he did have the first show I ever heard. I
Right.
mean, of any podcast anywhere. So I'll give him that. And he's been ahead of his time. Okay, sniffer of this. Very woody.
Yeah.
It's got a pukey aftertaste.
You're just not a Scotch guy. This stuff is the best. This is the best bottle in the house.
I'm just saying it's got a kind of a pukey aftertaste to it. That's all I'm saying. All right.
Did you hear that, Graham? You're welcome.
No one can hear
Thanks
us.
for blowing
Thank
$100
God.
on this bottle.
Thank God no one's here. All right. You got it set to record here?
Okay, I'll start it. Okay, go ahead.
Hey everyone, welcome to another action-packed episode of ARG Presents. I'm Amigo Aaron, joined as always by Mr. Blue Sky himself, John Boat of Car Schaller.
Mr. Blue,
Oh man, ELO's rolling over in their graves, and they're not even dead.
Oh!
So, if you joined us last week, you'll recall that the wheel was spun, the deal was made for us to play games on the beloved Sega Genesis / Mega Drive. Bo, did you ever own a Genesis in your long, illustrious console-owning career?
I have. I've owned both the original Genesis and the Model 2. The first Model Genesis being vastly superior.
It's cooler looking,
It looks
which
awesome.
is why I went for the first model. Just a little bit about the Mega Drive / Genesis. Of course, this thing was released at different times and different places. In North America, this was released on August 14th of '89, just under the wire of the '80s. In Japan, released just a little bit earlier, as in a year, bam, October of '88. And then you got your PAL versions sometime around September of '90. So it's funny, they staggered it by about a year between the two. Now, this was not a big seller in Japan. It pretty much got trounced for the most part, but it ended up rallying in America and in Europe. It was very popular in Brazil. Brazilians loved the Master System, so they just cruised right on up to this, right? This thing has a 68,000 processor in it. If you're a fan of our other show, Amigos, you'll know that that's a pretty popular processor in the Amiga line. And so you had some back and forth porting that went on there. This thing was available from Sega. They made this thing from 1988 all the way to 1997.
Wow.
Which is a hell of a run.
Yeah.
And it was pretty popular. And of course, it duked it out with the Super Nintendo and briefing the Nintendo for the main spot of that era. And at various times had pulled ahead. Now, I think overall in sales, I'm not sure. Do you think that the Genesis jumped ahead? I think Super Nintendo probably ended up selling more.
I don't know. I think worldwide,
I can tell you the figures for this anyway. Worldwide, this thing sold 30.75 million units worldwide, and then they licensed it to a few other places that sold some Tech Toy, which I believe they sell the Brazilian version, 3 million.
yeah, I think the Genesis had a longer lifespan than the Super Nintendo on the market, so it probably sold more consoles.
So do you want to guess the best-selling game for the Genesis? This is a real tough one.
I'm going to guess, is it one of the Sonic games?
It's Sonic the Hedgehog,
All right.
15 million units.
Wow.
Of course, the launch price of this in the United States was $189. All right, not bad.
It's very similar to I think the Super Nintendo launched around the same price.
Right, and by today's money, that'd be $386. So it sounds like a ton, but it's not as much as you would think. The Genesis did have some online capabilities.
Did it have what Nintendo don't?
It did. It had a thing called X-Band, which my brother actually has one of the X-Band cartridges. I've never actually seen one in use. Have you ever done any of the networking stuff?
Yeah,
with
the Super Nintendo also had an X-Band modem.
That's right.
And I played it for the first time at our friend Mike and Jamie's house.
Oh,
they
yeah?
had one back in the day.
They also, now I remember hearing about this, they had the Sega MegaNet and the Sega Channel.
And my friend Joey had the Sega Channel.
Really? Do you remember how that worked?
Yeah, it was a cartridge, and it plugged in. It had like a phone line or something that came into it. And you basically downloaded games over you know, a broadband, or not broadband, a modem connection, you know, over a T1 line, like everybody had in 1989.
How did it work? Do you remember? Did it work pretty well? It seems like it would work okay.
Yeah, I mean, the games were pretty small.
Because I guess it would just write the game to the cartridge, and when you'd play it until it was done. So effectively, you would have the cartridge until you were done.
And the cartridge was also the UI, so there was a menu, and you just scroll through and you pick the game that you wanted. I don't know that they offered, you know, top tier titles on the Sega channel. It was sort of, I think, akin to you know, the lower class of games. But yeah, it was definitely the first thing of its kind that I ever saw. Even though Atari also had, did you know that they had a similar service? I do recall,
yeah, and they even had they even made a tape drive for the Atari 2600, which was pretty unusual. I believe it even had a version like Frogger on it. So it's kind of neat. So we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Genesis and its crazy peripherals. Now, some of which I'm sure we'll play one of these days when the wheel spun. But the Genesis had quite a few nutty peripherals and add-ons. Again, this is your first model here. And one thing about the first model is it outputted its sound in mono, basically. And so if you wanted stereo for this, you actually have to take your sound out via the headphone jack. It is stereo, which I always thought that was kind of weird. And of course, you can mod these things out the yin-yang. This one should be modded to work better, because it's not it's on again, off again. This one has the cool volume control, too. So you could get wacky peripherals. And the first thing that came out for it was the add-on CD. Now, did you ever know anyone that had one of these add-on CD elements?
I knew a guy that had the all-in-one unit that was produced by JVC.
Sure, the real nice. It looks like a little CD player almost.
But yeah, I never had somebody that just rammed it on the side.
Yeah, that was well. And now, of course, on this version, this thing would. I think this one would set in it. I believe. I think they both did. And then you'd have your CD over here, and then you also had these X30, the 32X, which was like it's kind of a mushroom-shaped deal that just fits in the cartridge slot. It's got its own cartridge slot, and it would play 32X games. I actually got one of these things. The problem with all these wacky peripherals is, well, there's a bunch of problems, actually, and one of which is you have to power them all separately. This is a colossal pain. Because you've got your power jack here, and then you've got to have you've got three huge power bricks.
Sort of the inverse problem of the Coleco Atom.
We just got one massive one. My God, can you mention three of those things? You'd blow a hole in the floor. But these ain't small. Something else, if you're using different versions of the Genesis, you can have different video cables to hook into these various items. Because, for example, the 32X, it plugs in here, right? Easy enough. Then you've got to run the video from this to the 32X, and then you have another cable that goes from the 32X to your television, right?
Wow.
Plus, added bonus, the much more popular and much more widely sold Model 2 takes a different video out than this. So you have to have a special cable for just this type right here, which I had to buy separately. Luckily, they're not too hard to get, but still, pain in the butt. And so, on top of everything else, you've got a cartridge slot plugging into another cartridge slot. So if you've got dirty pins or any weird connections, then it's not going to work, which I had to clean the heck out of mine. So yeah, a lot of people think those crazy peripherals sunk this thing like a stone. And the 32X, as famously is known, was released directly before before the Saturn came out. So everyone knew that, why would you buy this? And no one did. And so there you go. But that's a topic for another time. We're going to talk about this thing when it was in its prime. It was punching out the good stuff. And we've picked a couple titles here, sort of at random, to talk about. I will go first this week. I'll lead the charge, Bo, if I may. And we're going to talk about the adventures of Batman and Robin. Now, this is a Batman property, clearly, and this is a property that is from the animated series. So before we get into the game, I want to talk a little bit about the animated series, of which I am a big fan. I love this show. I watched the debut episode when it debuted in America on prime time. I think it was On Leather Wings was the very first episode that I ever saw, and I have got the whole run on DVD. Love it. Love the show. And so I was looking at this game with a critical eye. So this show ran for a long time in various ways. It debuted on September 5th, 1992, and then the original Batman the Animated Series ran until 95. The reason this is called Batman, The Adventures of Batman and Robin is at a certain point in the run of the series, Fox decided to have them change the title and have Robin be a continual character to appeal to more kids. I will say normally I would be appalled, but they actually made Robin out to be pretty awesome in this show. In fact, they had several Robins, just like in the comics, and the original Robin from Batman the Animated Series ended up becoming Nightwing, and then they had another Robin come in, Jason Todd, and he was still a pretty cool character.
Which one got killed by the Joker?
In the comics, Jason Todd got killed. He was the least popular Robin. That's a very famous graphic novel or comic series called The Killing Joke. I believe that was The Killing Joke, and it's very popular. I mean, it's of all the Batman's ever released, I'd say it's probably the #1 most famous thing that they ever did was killing off for the Joker, killed off for Jason Todd. But that stuff didn't really happen, although he met a different fate. If you watch the animated series, which just go watch it. I'm not going to try to get into that because that's years and years away. So this game came out right when they had swapped over to the new title. With the new title, again, every episode would feature Robin more prominently, which wasn't a huge deal. So this game came out in February of '95. Now, actually, it got a release in Europe earlier, 1 month earlier. So for once, they got the title before we did in America. It was developed by an outfit called Clockwork Tortoise. Their opening screen on here, it looks like it was drawn by a 4-year-old. I don't know what they were going for there, but it was. I didn't like it. So, what is this game? Well, the game is sort of what you would think it would be. You get to choose between Batman and Robin, and you can have 1 or 2 players simultaneous, in which case someone plays Batman and someone plays Robin. And you go through the game to beat these various levels, and the levels are split up like episodes of the show, which I'll get into in a little while. But each major level has 4 or 5 like minor levels in it, and maybe a few like lower level bosses that are related to the main bad guy, and that's how it goes. It's pretty standard fare, really, for this sort of stuff. So the premise of this game is you're eventually going after Mr. Freeze, who's sort of the heavily billed bad guy in this. Mr. Freeze appeared in the animated series in one of the cinematic releases, or it's actually probably directly a DVD. Mr. Freeze, basically an hour and 20-minute long episode that they did with just Mr. Freeze. He was a pretty prominent character.
Did he make all kinds of awesome puns like Arnold did?
No, no. Oh. It's funny, just as a slight sidebar, I was a big fan of the show, and I hated all the movie Batmans. I thought the first one was okay. I tolerated the second one, and then that was the end of my patience with the Batman series. I was done. And of course, now it's in vogue to make fun of these things, but trust me, I really haven't liked any of them that much. The first one was okay, but even it wasn't that great, in my opinion. And so, the animated series had a theatrical release, and it was called The Mask of the Phantasm. And it came out, and I can't quite remember the year, but I remember it was wintertime, because I remember I was on my way to see it when my car stopped with me, my mom, and I think Brent in the car. So I had to hike across the interstate down over a hill to somebody's house to get somebody to come help us.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember being so mad. I was like, well, I'm not going to be going to see Batman tonight. But I ended up seeing like the next day, and it was so much better. If you haven't seen Mask of the Phantasm, I urge you to go see it. It's a great, great film. And it crushes anything that had been released at that point. Now, the newer Batmans that have been released in the past few years are more tolerable. They thieve a lot of stuff from the animated series, but they're still not great. If you want to see good quality Batman adventures, the DC animated universe is the way to go. So, anyway, it was easy it seems like it would be easy to take the elements that made up Batman and put them in a game. And this game did so with sort of mixed results, in my opinion. So, like I said, you've got various levels. Let's talk about these different levels and sort of in the episodic way that they're presented. The first episode is called Happy Birthday to Me, and it's a Joker episode. Now, if you watch,
now, are these actually based on episodes from the animated series? Okay.
These are not. And by the way, this isn't the first game to do this, and it wouldn't be the last. It was the Super Nintendo version of the Batman animated show did a very it's the exact same thing, but the game is radically different. Not radically, but it's a different game. It's not the same game, so it's not something that you haven't seen before. So, in this one, you're trying to stop the Joker. Him and his gang are basically robbing a bank, a jewelry store. There's not really a coherent theme to these things. There's not like a bunch of cutscenes, and there's no animation, there's no voice, there's none of that stuff, which is sort of a shame. So in the first level of this one, like I said, you're going after the Joker's gang, and the gang is presented like clowns. Some of the clowns are big oafy guys. Some of them have guns. It's a generic beat 'em up stuff, and it's split into like an upper and lower level. Sort of
all like Bad Dudes.
It is in some ways. In fact, there's another level in this game that's really, really like Bad Dudes. But basically, you're Batman or Robin, and you've got really a couple attacks. You've got like a projectile that you could upgrade. Then you've got just sort of a generic batarang. And then when the guys get close to you, that batarang turns into punches and kicks. So right out of the gate, I had trouble with this game. And the reason I have trouble with any of these games where Batman throws like 4 million batarangs. Now, even if you've only seen the movies, you would know that Batman doesn't... He'd have to have a sack of batarangs.
He throws them like he's dealing cards.
That's right. He's Gambit, he ain't. and the fact that Batman's using all these projectiles, it always irritates me. And you have to use them. You don't have a choice.
Right.
The fact that these low-level flunkies give Batman so much trouble, that irritates me too.
Batman's skills as a detective kind of downplayed in this time.
Not a peep. Of course, Roy, it's like the bad guys are being subtle.
Right.
The first level, the whole screen's shaking, this crap, it's crazy time. So this is good. I knew right there, I was like, this is going to be one of those. And it is. This is more akin to something like a Contra than it would be to a Batman game. Yeah. If Contra could go fisticuffs with you, the second thing I noticed right out of the gate was this game was merciless. I played this game a lot this week, and I've never beat I never beat Harley in her tank. That's how I would get beat there every time.
I couldn't get past the first level, and I tried really, really hard, and I could not do it.
It is difficult, and the key to it is because the first actual stage was not that tough. What makes it tough is when the guys come out with those guns. They come in pairs, and they have like a triple shot, and they shoot in different directions at you, and it's really tough to dodge.
It's very hard to avoid them.
On top of that, you've got these big clowns that come out and that you have to deal with, and they're real tough to deal with. But I could get to the point where the game gives you the ability to have 6 continues, which sounds like a lot, but it's not.
Right, because you only get 2 lives.
Right, and so I could get to the point where Harley Quinn comes up with her tank, the birthday tank, and she would. Oh, I never got past her. So you know what that meant. I had to resort to trying to cheat. I had to resort to watching videos.
Were you able to get... I couldn't figure out... There is a level select code that I found.
I never got it to work.
I couldn't get it to work either.
No, I had to download some save games and play with an emulator, which I don't like to do. So, like I said, the boss on that level is Harley. She comes out in a tank. All right, it's odd. It's okay. Harley is what a lot of people don't know this, but Harley was a unique character to the show. She didn't exist in the comic books. They made her up for the show. Yeah. So I always thought that was kind of cool. And of course now she's
she's
huge.
One of the biggest stars in the universe.
It's funny how that works. The hotness, I'm sure, came into play.
Yes.
So you go through most of the first level is just basic stuff. There's a level where you have to fight a bunch of copters, and then eventually Harley comes back, and you have to fight her. Plus, you have to fight this crane that's coming back and forth. And I
often fight cranes.
The effect of the crane is awesome. I will give them credit. Do you remember the game Balls? I think that's what it was called. It was all based on balls.
It's like a fighting game, right?
Yeah. it's that kind of. I'm trying to think of another game that has that kind of same kind of gimmick, where there's a series of balls in a line, and they use it to make the illusion of
it's like scrolling, or it's like scaling using balls to scale.
And that is one of that little scene reminds me of what irritates me about this game. Hidden in this mess of gaming, difficulty-wise, is some pretty nice effects. Some nice scrolling. It runs fast. It looks pretty good. I mean, I thought it looked pretty good for the most part. But I'd say of all the things I saw, I thought the crane was the most interesting thing in the whole game visually. I thought it was interesting to look at. So eventually, you run across the game, which are the series of events in the first level that reminds me of Bad Dudes, where you run around on this endless convoy of trucks before you finally get to the Joker in a huge, big chomping mouth hot air balloon, and you have to take him down. I will say when the Joker dies or falls, he lays down and just looks like mauled. It's pretty appealing because the Joker's a pretty amusing foil.
Now, the Joker never actually dies in any of the versions of the Batman universe, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, in the comic books, everyone dies a million times. I mean, so it's hard to say. But, I mean, in the animated show, well, again, you'd have to really get into it and watch it. If you got into watch a Batman Beyond, which was sort of the natural end of that show, I think he does meet his demise, but no one's really sure.
Right.
By the way, just Batman in the show is voiced by a guy named Kevin Conroy, I think is his name, Conway, and the Joker is voiced by Mark Hamill of Star Wars fame, and he's gotten a lot of praise for his
think he's
ability.
probably more famous from his role in Wing Commander, to be honest.
Listen, I liked him in Wing Commander. I liked him in everything he's done. But his Joker is he's the best. The best.
His Joker is really good.
He is number one with a bullet. So that's the first level. I'm not going to be as full with all these other levels. So the second level is Two-Face. Okay, it's called a two-sided story. This one, the first section, is put you on it's the old elevator level.
Yeah.
Right. We've all seen them.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Heavy Barrel or something.
Streets of Rage.
Yeah, they've all got them. And then you have to fight a Zeppelin's cannons. Now this level does do something that is sprinkled throughout the game. It has a flying level. It is generic. It's generic looking shooter, basically. I mean, it's plain Jane. There was nothing special about it, in my opinion. I wasn't so overly impressed with it. I mean, this was not R-type. You know what I'm saying? It's okay. It breaks up the other parts of the level, but it's not like I was like going like, oh yeah, this is the stuff. If you'll recall, there was another Batman game where they added like a driving level, and the driving level was pretty good. Mm-hmm. Like you're like, oh, this is nice. This I would say is a step below that. So the boss at this one, you finally end up fighting this huge helicopter, and you have to fight Two-Face himself. You know, c'est la vie. So the third level, probably my favorite level, Tea Time. Tea Time features the Mad Hatter in a cartoon. He's voiced by Roddy McDowall, which I absolutely love.
I don't know anything about him.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't know who Roddy McDowall is?
I thought you were going to say Roddy Piper.
Do you know who? You ever watched Planet of the Apes?
No.
Have you ever seen Fright Night?
We've reviewed it on Amigos.
So you haven't seen the movie,
No.
though. You don't know who Roddy McDowall is. You ever seen Hell House?
These don't sound like movies I would watch.
Okay. Well, trust me when I tell you, he was like president of the Screen Actors Guild for like a long time. He's a big deal.
Okay.
So look him up. But he's awesome. He did the voice of the Mad Hatter, and he did it great. So I was sort of looking forward to a Mad Hatter level, but this level is ridiculous. I mean, I cheated my way to get there, and I couldn't do anything. I just got mauled. Super tough level. It's called Tea Time. And there's on the first level, there's these things that I had to look up what they were called. They're called shock puppets. These things, they suck. I mean, I couldn't get past them to save my life. They were just really tough. In this one, you fight a robotic cat face that's curtain draws. You have to fight this big flat face, and these little cat paws come out.
Weird.
Yeah, it is. It's very strange. What do you want? And then you also fight a Robo Pinocchio at one point.
Now that I can get behind.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Then There's also a neat section on this that's a flying section where you're flying down a tunnel, and the tunnel scrolls out like this, and it's real well done. It's another aspect
Is
of
it like
the
a
game.
trench run sort of deal?
I'm trying to think what I could compare it to. It's sort of like Stun Runner or something. Just like it was really neat the way it was, and it was real trippy, you know. But again, that was cool. But it's a lot like a Laserdisc game. I look at that background, but the foreground not so good.
Yeah.
And then finally, of course, you fight the boss, and he flies around his huge hat, and he's which I guess he could do that, but anyway. I didn't think that was that good either. So finally you get to the end, and it's called Snow in July. Again, it's some snow stuff. There's flying with a jetpack. You fight Mr. Freeze. Wham Bam Bob's your uncle. You crack his helmet, kill him, or wipe him out. And at the end of the game, it shows him in Arkham telling Batman he's going to get vengeance. And then the ending of this was crap. It's like, that's all? It was what you would expect. Now, here's a news flash. This company never did another thing. So they were well known for really pushing the limits, but in the end, they didn't make a good game. And this game is just known as being too difficult to push comes to shove. So your thoughts?
Yeah, I really wanted to like this game because at first I thought, well, I can get behind this. It's got simple controls. I like the way that you can jump up on the ledge above you and swing out and
kick the guys.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
That's great until the gunners come out.
Yeah.
Then you're boned.
There are some control things that hamper this game. One is you don't turn fast enough. In Contra, you are able to hit the button and the guy immediately spins around. There's a slight delay that means certain doom in this game. It's not a one-hit kill game. You do have a health bar, and there are power-ups scattered about. But I always get frustrated when I can't even beat the first level, and that's where I was with this one.
This game is known for its difficulty, so it's not. As usual, I know how to pick them, and this is a tough one. In fact, the third level has been called one of the hardest levels in any game, so your mileage may vary. I wanted to like it too, but again, I knew right out of the gate, I'm like, here we go. Batman chucking all these stupid batarangs. And I knew when I got to the level with all the gun guys, if there was one gun guy, this is like the third screen of the first level. Let us figure out what we're doing, for God's sake.
I thought that this game had, it's sort of in the beat 'em up tradition, but even for a beat 'em up, it had so many bad guys.
Yeah.
They really opened the floodgates, and these guys just pour out.
And you can't really, I like a lot of games where you can pick up and toss them, and it wipes out a bunch of guys. This isn't that type of game. No. It's more of a shooter. If you're in hand-to-hand combat zone, they're way too close.
I would call it a Grisor clone.
Now, you can build up your secondary weapon, right? And after a while, that really gets you a long ways. But I can never get far enough to build it up enough.
I would build it up to where I felt like I was good, and then I would die and lose it.
And it's so frustrating, especially and also when you take those continues. Of course, as usual, you start at the beginning of the level, which is beyond frustrating. So yeah, I can't say that I enjoyed it. No. I tried to, and even the animation, so it's okay. But not having the voice acting and not having any sort of cutscenes was a real letdown. Now, with that said, the Mega Drive version, the Mega CD version of this has little clips in it. It has voice acting, which would probably go a long way. But I still don't think I could recommend it even with that stuff. I would probably watch the video, but not actually want to play the game. This reviewed, and it did okay, really. Sega Mag gave it a 90. Player One gave it 87. Video Games 85. Here's a good magazine. Quebec Gamers 80. Retro Gaming History, though, this is when they start to dip. The newer reviews 70%.
Well, look what year that Quebec Gamers is.
Yeah, 2010. So you'd think they would have killed it. EGM gave it a 6.9 out of 10. So, and boy, here you go. The Video Game Critic, February 2006, 33 D+. And then, so those were not the best scores, but would you give this an 80 or a 90?
No.
I couldn't do it. Now, we're not great. So maybe if you're really awesome at the game, you might. I don't know. So on eBay, this was rather a surprise. When we've been doing these console games, and you think Genesis games, they're giving these things out when you buy a cheeseburger, right? Not this one, they're not. The card only, right? 18 to 22 bucks, right? Which that's a lot for just the cart.
Yeah.
a boxed copy of this. You're gonna say I saw, and this is mostly on the high end of this, between $30 and $70.
Oh my gosh!
And then I saw a couple sealed copies. In fact, there was one up $100, and they'd sold. So there you go.
This is a collectible title.
I looked up the Mega Drive versions to see if there's any variance there. Someone in China is making these things, which that right there tells you they've got some worth, because they wouldn't be cranking these out if they didn't. $16, but if you want a boxed version, a Mega Drive version, $125, and it's sold.
Boy.
So there you go. So if you want to pay a lot of money for and then be really frustrated, this is a game for you. Bo, let's take it. Let's let you take it away. What do you got?
All right. So my game this week is Daytona, and by that I mean virtual racing. So,
Virtua is not Virtua.
It was a couple years before they discovered that was an awesome thing to do. So, virtual racing, I'm going to talk a lot about the arcade machine that this is based off of before I get into the home conversion. So, this was released in 1992 and was developed by Sega AM2. The individual developer was this guy named Yu Suzuki. Have you heard of him before?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
I thought so, because he invented Space Harrier, Outrun, Hang On, Afterburner, and Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, man. So what a resume.
He's got a little bit of a pedigree.
Yeah.
This game was an attempt to bring a polygonal 3D-based racing title into the next generation. Of course, there were 3D polygonal racers before this. There was a game called Winning Run in 1988 that used a lot of polygons, but Hard Driving it was the first 3D virtual racing simulator, or actually driving simulator. Hard Driving is not really a racing game, is it?
Which we own, by the way. I own that game. I'm dying to sell it. If you're interested in buying one. But yeah, Hard Driving was the first one I played of that type, and man, I remember being blown away. It's like, holy smokes, this is just like driving a real car.
Right.
So you got a key.
And so this game sort of took what Hard Driving did and just made it better.
Made it fun.
Yeah, made it fun. This was also the first Virtua title that was released. This became a brand for Sega later on down the line, and they had Virtual Racing, Virtua Fighter, Virtua Cop, Virtual On.
Yep.
So there were
fighting game.
Yeah, there's
Virtual Kids.
That's a lie. That's not a game.
No, that's a game. Virtual Fighter Kids, the little kids. Yeah. I swear to God, look it up.
So the original arcade game and our port has 3 different tracks. They're split into beginner, intermediate, and advanced. The beginner is called the Big Forest. The intermediate is called the Bay Bridge, and the expert level is Acropolis.
Ooh.
Yeah. Each level has its own special feature that you can view as you're spinning around it. Big Forest has a amusement park. You can see the Ferris wheel in the background. Bay Bridge, the big attraction is the bridge, of course.
Makes sense.
And Acropolis is just known because it's got this tight hairpin turn. You go down this stretch, and then it's literally just doubles back on itself. So those are the 3 stages. When you select a car, you can choose between different transmission types, and there are some crazy transmission types. There's a special thing you can press to get a 7-speed transmission, which I mean, I am automatic only when it comes to these games. Yeah. I don't need any added complexity. Man. Yeah. And the thing that made this awesome, and I remember playing this for the first time over at Rock Lake. The putt-putt arcade laser tag arena nearby where we live, and it was just so cool that they had the different views. There were 3 or 4 different views you could select with buttons right there on the console, and
at any time.
Yeah, at any time, and so it was so cool to be able to see the bird's eye view or go down in the cockpit or whatever. So I thought that was awesome. All versions of virtual racing in the arcades were linkable up to 8 players. So you could have some pretty massive races.
And we've done that.
Yeah, you were just talking about
our buddy who has an arcade in Charleston has what's he got? 4 of these linked up, and he's even got little TVs that go on top of them so people can watch you play.
Yeah, they were known. Those TVs were known as live monitors, and they would sit on top the twin cabinets and replay action shots occurring with actual players. And there was actually even a virtual commentator named Vert McPolygon. That would give
I
you
don't
play by
recall
play.
that.
Yeah, I missed out on Vert.
Vert McPolygon, what a name.
So, home console version of this game, I chose this game to review on the Genesis, and this game was in the long and short of it is it was too advanced for the Genesis. They had to do some internal cartridge modifications to get this thing to work, by which means that they soldered a whole new chip onto the cart to give it the ability to push this many polygons out. There was the cartridge design was known as the Sega Virtual Processor, the SVP, and what everybody remembers about this game, aside from how impressive it was to see on the Genesis, was how expensive it was.
Yeah.
In 1994, we're nearing the end of the Genesis's life span, and it was selling for about $100. This cart retailed for about $100. So the cart was as expensive as the machine.
I believe it had the same circuitry that was like in the 32X, right?
It might.
Yeah. I mean, it's at least very similar.
Now, I will tell you that this game, because of this chip, it locked it out of both Majesco's re-released Genesis 3 from 1998, so not the original Genesis 3, but the second model.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't work on any Genesis with a 32X. You had to take the 32X out to get that to work.
You also can't play any. You can't play any Master System games with the 32X in. Yeah, so the 32X has some kind of who knows.
Who knows what's going on in that thing?
It's crazy.
Yeah. However, if you have a 32X, you're in luck, because the Sega 32X version, which was known as Virtual Racing Deluxe, it was also released in 1994. So Sega, it was clear that they didn't know what they were doing with the 32X.
So wait a minute. They launched this for the Genesis, and then they launched the thing to play in the special thing the same year.
Right. So instead of making Virtual Racer their killer app for their new console, they're like, well, we'll just release a Genesis version too.
Can you imagine that?
Well, it's the Amiga in action, you know.
Now, did you get a price on the Deluxe? Because I'm wondering if the price on the Deluxe was cheap enough to where you could get the 32X plus the Deluxe for under the amount of money it would cost.
Wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard that. I've played the 32X version. It's better.
And it's got 2 extra cars and it's got 2 extra tracks.
Yeah.
So there's no reason not to get the 32X version. There was also a Saturn version that I'm sure was awesome.
Which it is.
And then PlayStation 2 version came out a couple of years later, actually about 10 years later.
A couple of years.
It was called Virtual Racing Flat Out. And I've never played that. Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it includes 3 new courses and 4 new cars.
Really?
Yeah.
We may have to get that. I've got a PS2.
Yeah. So this game, I love this game. I think it's great. It combines a lot of the things that I like about other racing games into one. It's got it's a very bright environment. You know, the sky is super blue. The colors really pop. Even though the textures are all polygonal, they're drawn in a kind of a stylized way. They didn't try and make it too realistic. So, you know, everything is really crisp and bright, even on the Genesis version. The Genesis version does have more pop in, it does have more dithering and things like that, but it runs super, super fast. I didn't detect any slowdown in what I was doing. I was able to, you know, go through the different viewpoints and everything. It was fine. I was not very good at this game, even at the beginner level. I couldn't win, but I played it a bunch of times. One thing I didn't like is I didn't like that you couldn't play the other tracks at the beginner level. Like, I wish you could have played the hairpin track at the beginner level.
Yeah, and they get tougher too.
Yeah. Another thing I like about this is that when you wreck, it's not like pole position where your car blows up and you have to wait for your car to reappear. This is more like Outrun or more like Lotus, where, you know, your car spins out of control but always lands on its feet and you're actually right off again.
Wrecking is sort of a slight inconvenience.
Yeah. So I like that a lot. What did you think of this game?
First of all, I'm a big fan of this in the arcade. Mm-hmm. I played it a lot, and I always thought it was fun. And I'm not a big racing guy, but I had some success with this. I always liked it. And I went on to like the Daytonas and the touring cars. I like that. So I'm not necessarily great at them, but they're fun. Mm-hmm. I look at this game in 2 different lights. As a Genesis game, it's quite astounding. If you consider this was running on a 68,000 processor, then they put in some souped up junk to make it work. It's amazing to get a playable, passable game with that base system. That much said, the frame rate is not good. I've never liked it. It's not. The arcade is really smooth. This is not as smooth. This has some weird. You don't get the same feeling when the ground slants. It's very jarring almost. It almost feels to me like your car is on the center of the screen, and it is. I mean, and everything's moving around you, which it is. But other games, other versions make the illusion of that work, and this one doesn't for me. I guess it's just the unsmoothness of the uneven grounds moving around. This thing doesn't have the little bells and whistles that I like, the cool sparks and all the stuff that you would get in the other games.
This one's got sparks.
It's not the same. They're not the same. They don't look as cool. I will say it's as a technical achievement, it's impressive. If I'd had nothing but a Genesis, all right, and this came out, and I was a big fan, and I bought it, I would not be disappointed. Okay, so that's sort of the ultimate compliment. However, the CD32X or the 32X version is way better. The Saturn version is way better than this one. Not just because of the extra stuff. Which it would be. It's a Saturn. So what I have paid upwards of $100 for it, which in today's money, God knows how much it is, a couple $100 for this. No, because is this the best racing game on the Genesis? Let's go down that road. This has all that extra hardware, and it costs all that much money. Would you consider this your favorite racing title on the platform? Because it should be for the extra amount of money you've got to pay, right? I mean, can you think of better ones than this one? I mean, it is good. That's why I posed the question.
I think
because the Genesis isn't really known for its racing titles, is it? I mean, really.
I think probably. Well, no, I still prefer Outrun on the Genesis. Outrun on the Genesis.
See, I have to agree with you, but Outrun isn't nearly as. This is a much more challenging title to pull off. Outrun came out 83 or something like this. This came out much later.
And I really and that's really I've played Outrun for years and years and years, and I've barely scratched the surface of virtual racing. Maybe virtual racing it would become my favorite if I gave it some more time.
Well, like I said, I can look at this in 2018 eyes because there are other easier, better ways to play it. And it wasn't too long after this was released. I mean, clearly the same year.
Right.
The 32X would have been the way to go.
Yeah.
And also, you knew that the Saturn was coming. This would probably get ported to that. I probably wouldn't have paid the $100 on a console that was literally at the very, very edge of its lifespan.
I agree with that for sure.
So, all that said, this was also a fool's folly to put this out. The amount of money they spent on this and the amount of time and effort they spent to make this work on the Genesis is one of the main reasons why Sega, got crushed. I mean, this was an idiotic waste of money. I mean, did they achieve their goal? Yes, but at the cost of any sort of sanity. They had this money and time from a team of this quality could have been spent gearing up the Saturn, which ended up they botched that too. They botched the launch of that. So it's the Genesis. We talk about all these different consoles, and the Genesis, in my mind, always takes a back seat to the Super Nintendo in this country, for sure. Right? I mean, I think people look at the Genesis less fondly than they do Super Nintendo, and I think part of the reason is, and this I'm going off on a tangent here. I think part of the reason is the Genesis makes me sad. It was such a promising, great console, and it ended so stupidly. And it was the beginning of the end of Sega as a company that manufactured video games.
Well, it was also the beginning of the beginning for Sega, too. It was their beginning and
you're right. Yeah, it was. It's like they caught lightning in a bottle, and then they got shocked. They couldn't handle it. If only they had, they should never have released that 32X. They shouldn't have released this. And they should have released the Saturn in a proper way. Then you got something. That's my thoughts.
That's it, and we could talk about all the follies of right. Sega couldn't have imagined that 3D games would take off the way that they would, and they designed the Saturn primarily as a 2D system, and there were mistakes were made.
But they had screwed up that market. They had screwed up well before the Saturn got
released. They announced and launched the Saturn on the same day.
I know. Something else before we get off the subject. Amongst the other things that bugged me about this game is that sometimes, depending on what view you're in, the background would get really just weird. Like you would almost, the track and some of the grass around it would kind of go into this like mystery zone. You know, there'd be a lot of see-through. And again, I feel bad. I don't want to. I'm not here to kill this game because it's an incredible technological feat. But it shows you the difficulty of something of this complexity that was smashed into a cartridge and stuck in the Genesis. So in that aspect, it's quite remarkable. If I were to come across one of these cartridges for a song, I'd buy the hell out of it just because it's an amusing, interesting piece of video game history. So on that, I would definitely give it its merits. And as a technical achievement, I give it its merits. And as a playable game, I give it its merits. So I guess actually I sort of recommend it, but you know, I have my qualms about it.
It reviewed extremely well.
I
reviewed
bet.
it reviewed in the 80s and 90s. You know, the Genesis magazines, I'm sure, were going through the same thing that the Amiga magazines were going through, where towards the end of any console's lifespan, they're desperately trying to stay in business, and they don't want to give any game a horrible review. But this game is an outstanding achievement on the system.
Yes.
When you consider, you know, that it launched with, you know, a bunch of arcade conversions. So, well, this is an arcade conversion too, but you know what I mean.
Good job, bud.
Yeah. This game also won a bunch of awards. So in 1994, it was awarded 4th place on Mega's list of top Mega Drive games of all time. Mega being a magazine.
4th place of all time. Yeah.
Let's see. This is get this. In 2015, it was 3rd place on IGN's list of the top 10 most influential racing games ever. Can you tell me what number 1 and number 2 were?
Pole position should be up there.
That's number 1.
Influential of all time.
Of all time.
Outrun's got to be up there, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's up there, but it's not number 2. Think more modern.
Ridge Racer.
Think more modern.
More modern than Ridge Racer?
Yeah. What
Daytona?
game? No. What game sold 1 billion PlayStation 2s and PlayStation 1s?
Ridge Racer.
Well,
we bought ours.
more PlayStation 2.
Oh, Gran Turismo.
Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
I can understand that because
it
was
launch the genre of over-realistic, unplayable games.
Right.
I'm not a fan of the realistic driving.
Yeah,
games.
but anyway, I can see pole position, Gran Turismo.
Absolutely, because you can't deny it.
Yeah. Look this up on eBay. You can have it for a song. It's selling all day for under $20.
Really?
Yeah, complete.
May have to grab it because I can't play this in my own.
That's true. This would be a good one to own. All right, Aaron. That concludes our look at the Mega Drive.
You know what time it is.
It's time to spin the wheel.
And make the deal. So, Bo, what do we got this week?
So this week we have a new addition to our wheel. We have the Virtual Boy.
Okay.
So we have on the wheel many things. So we're going to give this wheel a spin and see how
No reason to beat around the bush for rock.
All right. It looks like the Sega SG-1000. Is our next title. Now, Aaron, is there anything that you want to say about the format of the show before we move on?
No.
Okay.
Nope. I got nothing to say about the format of the show. You lost me. Hold on a second. Now, the SG-1. This is an unusual. Have you ever seen one of these in the real world?
Never.
I've not either. Let me flip through our envelopes here. Bill and Eddie coming on. Here it is. The Sega SG-1. Bo, I've got no idea I have no idea what's in here.
I remember what I picked.
All right. So.
That's mine.
That's yours. So, I think it's your time to go first this time around.
Okay, I've picked Girls Garden.
Now, do you know anything about Girls Garden?
I do.
You do?
Yes.
Okay. I picked Hero. And I'm hoping it's like the hero that I know about.
Activision's own Hero.
So, I guess next week we'll be playing some SG-1000. Sega. 2 in a row.
Sounds good.
So, if you're into what we do here, if you're down with the wheel, you want to throw us a few bucks, we got a Patreon. Bo, what's the scoop on the Patreon?
Amigos.com/Patreon/oops.
And we
None of that was correct. Patreon.com/Amigos podcast.
I would have just kept right on track too. And a few bucks. Hey, it'd be great. We'd appreciate it. If not, no biggie, man. And we also are selling some shirts, including some ARG-related shirts.
That's right. If you go on over to tpublic.com/store/Amiga Tees, you can check them out.
Beautiful. So what do you think? SG-1000 next week?
Let's do it.
All right. So we'll see you next week for some Sega action. And until then,
Adios.
Probably a bit of sprucing there.
I have no idea where everybody's at. I mean, this is the first time we've ever done anything.
Something's going on. If we've got no one in the
Yeah,
chat,
we've got nobody.
maybe we need to restart. First of all, make sure that the showdown got worked. I mean, everything worked okay. Right?
Yeah, everything looks great.
Because that was an okay show. I thought that was pretty good. And I wasn't exactly licking my chops for that one, Bo. I'm not going to lie to you.
I'm going to restart the stream.
Aaron late again. No, I'm not. Can't believe we picked SG. I've never loaded up a single game from the SG-1000. What'd you think of that one? Were you down with that?
Well, I thought you were going to talk about how the show is going to change. And
I didn't think we were doing it next
week.
week. I thought we were doing it after. I told Brent it was after the marathon.
Oh, okay.
Change it. I was wondering what the hell you were talking about.
Yeah, well, I was confused about what was going
Listen,
on.
you can't expect Brent to show up next week and record the show. He's Brent. I've got to talk to him, set up dates and stuff. Listen, we don't have to wait till the marathon. Just give me a. Oh, good God Almighty! I like that. I can't believe we're not going to be. I'm going to miss doing that with you. I like that show. It's fun.
Well, it's not like I won't ever do it again.
What are we doing? That one that someone requested, by the way. Didn't somebody request that?
No. Well, Fold said that he was going to jump on next month for and he's going to give us the wheel things.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
And make sure. I think it's because I was watching all those Chicago ghetto videos.
In the ghetto, I would have voted wrong.
I'm definitely. It says our stream is live.
Let me see if I can access it with this via the phone. It's not popping up on my phone here. I will say that, which it almost always does.
Let me try getting our new stream key. It shows that we're live. Stream health.
Let me see if I've got a.
So the last Twitch that we did was 127.
And we moved over to Twitch today. That's weird. What do you think's going on? Maybe YouTube's got a problem with that,
Yeah,
man.
I think they do.
I knew someone would have showed up. We're not that unpopular. But
No, I mean,
hey, though, man, I don't know if you know this. I'm seeing you think, but like our last couple shows have been gangbusters. They've been, I mean, not ARG, but ARG's up and down like a yo-yo. But those other shows have been great.
7562717.
That Soccer Kid episode blew up. I don't know what the hell happened there.
It's because Soccer Kid's huge.
Didn't I badmouth soccer the next week? Whoops.
I hate soccer. It's the worst.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
Okay, so now we're here. I got to remember how to do this now. They've changed everything. Great. Okay, live. And we need to get the old stream key. Where would I get that from? Extensions, stats. Oh, there it is. I need that.
Very protective of the stream keys.
Yeah. Okay. And settings, stream.
Get the news up here.